part of the fun about toys and about making them. It's one of the few places where you can say, let's go bonkers with this. Let's try a bunch of different stuff and see what is going to be fun, because it's all about the adventure of getting to play. And if you know it's fun for you to be able to do that, you ensure that those who are getting it are probably going to have a lot of fun with it too.
It's always been our approach. Like we've always been making toys, like the toys that we want, like figures we wanted as a kid, or just like we're all big toy geeks at NECA. So we're all trying to just make stuff that we think it would be cool and stuff that we would want to buy if we saw it out at the store or something. So yeah, everything is just like trying to make it as fun as possible and as cool looking, put in like fun features that make sense, you know, like for, you know, accessories or a play feature or something. We try to have fun with it. So it's the whole point.
What's interesting to me too is that this is like a generational thing for you. Your dad, you said, was a toy maker. So he
worked in the industry. He was like a buyer. He would go to Toy Fair and he'd come home with like stacks of toy catalogs, you know, from like Kenner and Hasbro and Mattel and all of them. So I was exposed to this side of the business from a really early age. He'd tell me about this magical place, Toy Fair. He'd go to New York for a week in February and he'd come home with a big stack of these catalogs, and I would see all the toys that every company was, you know, I'd bring them to school and all my friends would just we just look through these things and you'd see like prototypes, and you'd see what all the Ghostbusters and all the He-Man stuff, you'd see what everyone had planned. And then yeah, like he would come home with like just a case full of like Toxic Crusaders, because like the guy that he bought from at Playmates, like, oh, you got like an 8-year-old son, like here's all this. So he would come home from work he worked at an amusement park, so he was like stocking all the gift shops. So I grew up in an amusement park. I was backstage behind like roller coasters and all this crazy stuff, you know. So I was just bombarded with
you were a carny kid is what
yeah, so like we were just like me and my sister, we were exposed to that stuff growing up. And then but I was just like really artistic, so I was always drawing and sculpting crap. So my parents just like really focused on like he needs to learn how to like be a commercial artist or something. And yeah, my dad like knew all these people in the industry and stuff, so I was just around it like from an early age. In Ohio, there was all these old Kenner guys. There's tiny, like I met Jim Groman, because he's from Cleveland and that's where I grew up. So like when I was in art school, I just met all these actual toy designers, because I was in Ohio and there just happened to be like tons of toy designers in Ohio from like Kenner and wherever else. So I just got lucky with just sort of being in the right place at the right time. And I was a kid and I just was obsessed with toys. So if there was a designer or some artist or sculptor, I just wanted to ask them questions and like bend their ear and like just, you know, how do you do this? Like, you know, and show them all my dumb drawings. And that's how everything led to Randy, was like through all these people that I met in school. You know, you're
operating in this time where it's like it's pre-internet, right? So it's like you have to be
it's really hard to do research. You know, like Toy Fair magazine, at the front of every Toy Fair magazine, they printed the addresses of like every toy company. Like if you wanted to send a letter you want to send fan mail, you want to send a portfolio to Hasbro, Toy Fair magazine, like you had to look for it because it was small, but like Mattel, Hasbro, Resource, that's how they were in Ohio. They made like Street Fighter and Sonic and Godzilla. So if you knew where to look for the stuff, it was there. It was
had to live in
Ohio. My mom, this is how I met Groman. My mom saw an article in the newspaper about these toy designers like living in Cleveland, like they had just started their own business. It was like 3 friends going into business for themselves, making toys. And my mom cut out the article, like sent it to me. She's like, you need to call these guys because they're like doing what you want to do. So that was it. Like there's an article in the paper. That's how I met Jim Groman. I was like, hey, Mr. Groman, I want to be a toy man like you. So yeah, it was before the internet, before social media. You can just like DM people.
It's fun that they gave you that, Groman gave you the access to, right? And I'm sure he's probably pretty excited about that also, I'd imagine.
Yeah, when he's like a teacher, like he teaches like art classes, he's all about paying it forward. So yeah, when I was like a kid with my portfolio, I just wanted him to look at it and tell me, you know, like just give me notes and like give me a critique or something. I just wanted to learn how to get better and make toys and do all that stuff.
This is part of my attempt of why I do what I do. It's trying to put a spotlight on all the awesome folks who are making the stuff that we get to have, right? You know, I mean, it's art, and you know, it's artists that, you know, don't always get the accolades. They don't get the due as much excitement as they should.
Oh yeah. No, you didn't know anyone's names. You didn't know Steve Varner. You know, his name was never on a box, or he never got credit. You know, and the Turtles were the biggest thing in the universe. Yeah, no one knew who, like, you know, any of those guys were.
Right. To me, it's like you're getting it's extra layers of appreciation there. Where it's
you watch, like, you know, Toys That Made Us or some of these shows, and a lot of the time the stuff that like went into developing the figure is like way more interesting. That you know, or you get like a weird figure and it's like, why? I always wondered, like, why did this figure look this way? And then you hear the story of like how it all, like the stuff that led to He-Man and like Battle Cat being a green tiger, and like, you know, it's just like the stories that those guys would tell, like going into these marketing sessions, or like, you know, doing the market research with kids, and you know, just the stuff that happened in Mattel was like fascinating to see how they developed that He-Man line.
Right. So, it's like different eras too of things, right? And how things are done, but it's some of it is still happening in similar ways, right? You know, it's like it was like they had the big gym, right? And they had the different pieces from that got reused in different places. You know, I think that's kind of cyclical a little bit, you know, like it happens differently, but there's still like, of course there's gonna be places where reuse needs to happen, because if there's characters that you're able to save quite a bit on, then that allows for some kind of more outrageous characters that would require more tooling, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's really been a big reason why, like, the cartoon, like when we made Vernon, and again, I was like, Randy, he could be like a were-rat, but I think we can also make Ace Duck and a Crooked Ninja Turtle goon. And like I had at least like 4 figures planned from using that Vernon body. When we made Vernon, I was like, it's this generic human that we can reuse again and again and again. So, you know, there's a handful of them that like the little, like Burn and Human Rocksteady and Smash, like they all share parts.
What does your modern day collection look like? I mean, you're saying when you're younger, it was like big He-Man, big Ghostbuster.
Yeah, right? Ghostbusters. I had a lot of Ghostbuster stuff. I still collect those now, like the Plasma series stuff. I got all that. The collection now is weird because it's a little all over the place. Like I have this Tailspin Baloo that I picked up off eBay, because I never had this when I was a kid, but I loved Tailspin's such a great show. Like when Disney Plus first came out, I was watching a little bit of Darkwing Duck and a little bit of Rescue Rangers. I was like, I don't know, they're okay. They're not as good as I remember. And then I put on Tailspin and it was like amazing. So I just binge watched all of Tailspin for some reason, you know. And then like there's
for the right reason.
There's another one, like I didn't have this figure when I was a kid. I had the crossbow version of him. So I was like, I need to get like Robin Hood, like the regular Robin Hood. So it's all over the place. Like I just have a little bit of everything. There's a glow-in-the-dark swamp thing I'm looking at.
Oh, nice.
So there's little bits and pieces of like figures I wanted as a kid that I never got. And then like I think I found this at like Designer Con and it just looked cool, so I bought it. And it's just some weird little skeleton dude. So I don't know.
I like that color scheme. It's like he's riding the pumpkin. You know?
Yeah. It's hard to explain what my collection is because there's just a little bit of everything. Like I have Nerfles and I have there's Calico Critters behind me over there. I have a ton of Calico Critters.
Were the Nerfles, were those the ones that had the faces and the hands? And
they were like a ball. It was like they were like a ball. Hold on, I'll get one.
What am I? I'm thinking Kushkins. Remember Kushkins?
Oh yeah, those were cool too because they're like the little fuzzy things. Yeah, my sister had those. I would like pull the hairs out of them.
I'd break. I mean, they would break immediately with me. It was like meant to be a yo-yo or something with it, but it's
a little springy thing, and they would just they'd get all like they would rot and pull apart and stuff. But all those weird little things were fun. I had a couple. I think it was before the pandemic. I bought like a big lot of the army ants. Do you remember those? They're like it was like orange versus blue ants, you know, and there's like a million of them, so you just get like they come in little packs. I liked all that stuff. There was Snailians. Do you remember Snailians, the supersonic shell fighters?
I vaguely remember Snailians, but I do remember
that was like a Ninja Turtle ripoff because they lived in the sewer and I guess they're from outer space, but they came to Earth and they're living in the sewer, and then they were all named after like loose change, I think. So they had names like Lincoln and like, I don't know, Nickel, or I don't they just, you know, it's just so all like the turtles all have the Renaissance that, you know, it's just like a carbon copy of that.
It was the biggest thing, you know, and that time it's like it has a resurgence, but it's like back then too, they had had so many different knockoffs of it, right?
Oh well, yeah, it's like before and after Turtles, because you can look at all the stuff in the 90s and it was like you could tell which ones were totally inspired by Turtles or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing I think I really liked about the Army Ants was that it really felt like characters that would have existed in the Turtles line. So those are ones that I could have in the same epic battle with all my other characters.
Yeah, they all can play together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because there's like Needlenose and Killer Bee, there's supposed to be a couple more of those, right? Wasn't there going to be like a giant ant or something? It was another one of those big mutant sort of
Army ant.
Yeah. So there you go.
And there was a buzzard too.
A buzzard.
So
Okay.
there's another one that Arshowski showed later on, but I don't know if that was one that he created as a design. You know, it was like a beetle or something like that, but it was cool.
Those guys, I always wondered if like Needlenose and Screwloose were like cousins or something. You know, I don't remember what the bio says, but I'm sure they're from different planets or they have a different, but they look like they could be like buddies. So Needlenose, that was a cool one.
I think the thing with, and this is what's fun, I think, with now versus back then, is that the same kids that grew up with those things and wanted those things are now adults who still want those things because they couldn't get them as kids too. You know, like there's, for every person, you know, who didn't have it, like I talked to a bunch of folks about this, how, you know, with the Turtles, so many people didn't have the actual core, just regular looking turtles. It was that they would have like a mix match of different ones, because if they didn't get it at the very beginning, that's it.
That was you couldn't find. There was another one you could get, but yeah, that was me for sure. And that happened to Ghostbusters too, where like I wanted the figures like the regular guys like you see on the show. I wanted all 4 Ghostbusters in just the regular jumpsuits. I wanted all 4 of the regular turtles, but I had like Leo and Raph, I think, for the regular ones with the squishy heads or something. I know I had the wacky wind up Dawn with the where he treads water, or like he can swim. I might have one of the storage shell turtles. I know I had the wind up Michelangelo because he's sticking his tongue out. Oh yeah. You know, and it just like it would drive me crazy that like those were if I wanted to make all 4 turtles, I had like 2 originals, 2 of the wacky wind ups, like one of the storage guys. Maybe later on, I might have had one of the head dropping ones, and like those are cool too. I just want like I was just a little brat. I just wanted all 4. It's like, damn it, why didn't you give me all of them? Like I don't want just one.
I get it. I'm very much a completist, so it's like if I had that would be my takeaway too. Where it's like if I got one as a birthday gift, I'd be like, and
well, these toy companies are evil, man, because it's like, you know, you need all 4 of them to complete the team. You can't just have the one guy. You know, I remember being about probably 3 years old, like lecturing Santa Claus at the mall. Like I just wanted the regular He-Man with the straps, you know, just the regular He-Man. And I was like, this is very important, Santa, like take notes. and it was explained because I think at that point I knew there was a couple different versions, and I didn't want the battle damage, like the battle armor where his chest flips, you know. I just wanted regular He-Man, and Santa's like, oh yeah, sure, got it. Like I remember. And then sure enough, like Christmas morning, I get the battle armor He-Man. I was like, God damn it. That's not what I want. You know, there's like Knight Rider, like I wanted that big kit car with Hasselhoff in it. You know, that looks so cool. And then I think my parents got me like a Matchbox or like a Hot Wheels version. And it had like these big monster truck tires. It was this weird thing.
I had the Hasselhoff, but not the car. So I think I must have got
frustrating.
It is. Well, and at the time, I don't think I knew. You know, it was when I got older, and I was like, where's the thing that's supposed to come with this? You know?
Yeah. It's, I don't know. Yeah, toy collecting, it's fun. It's frustrating, but yeah, it's, I don't know. It is fun. My dad worked in the industry, and he would bring home samples and stuff from work. He's like, hey, here, look what I got you, son. I got this kind of beat up turtle blimp. And I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And he brought home there was like a tank of helium or something that one of the guys at work gave him. So we thought we could inflate the blimp and make it float and everything. The tank was like completely empty. So that didn't work. So, and then when we finally blew it up just with like air, you know, we put the glider on it, and then the bottom piece of the glider at the front where all the turtles like sit, that was missing. So I never had like a complete I always wanted to play with the blimp because it was like one of the best vehicles in the line, but I had to like build that little glider, like that little crossbar piece with the engine, like the little turbines on the side. Like I take like old styrofoam, like chicken trays or something, like cut them up and glue toilet paper rolls. And it was just like, it was so crappy. You know,
well, you were getting into the toy making pretty early on then, it sounds like.
It was, I didn't have a choice really. Like my dad would bring home, all these weird toys that like, I got General Trag in like a Ziploc bag that just had like 10 weapons, like double all the guns and stuff that he normally, it was just, I would just get like weird stuff they were like sales samples or whatever. People just like give him stuff. Oh, you got a son, he'll like this. So like he'd bring home all these toys. I was like rebuilding and customizing and like trying to design toys like kind of from the get-go, I guess.
We brought up General Trag, and it was like when I was younger, I remember I think I had a ton of Trags, and I would pretend that they were the Rock Soldiers and Granitor, because they never made the Granitor, and that just drove me bonkers.
Yeah,
you know?
Granitor, not having Granitor, not having all the Punk Frogs like drove me nuts too, because there's just it was so in like the Punk Frogs could have been so cool looking in that Playmate style, because it was like Napoleon Bonafrog was so weird looking, and I always wondered like what the other two could have been, because they like,
I know
in the show they just all look like Genghis, they all look the same, but you know, and like Trag was so weird and so different looking from what he was on the show. It's like, what would like a Playmates version of like Granitor, what could have that been? You know, like it would have been amazing.
It would have been fun. I mean, it's fun for me to think about that too, you know, just about like the what could have been, because I've seen like, I don't know, you've probably seen this too, some of the concept stuff that they did and that was supposed to be toys are like sometimes way cooler in some places than what actually we
ended up with. Well, there's like Pizza Face where he had like the little mutant on the top of his head. Like they would simplify and, you know, cut costs wherever they could, and it's really neat to see like, you know, the amount of the third party stuff that people are making now. Like there's that guy that made the kind of a Playmate style pizza monster, and it's like, that thing's awesome,
right? And to do it in that style, it's like 30 years now complete, you know.
That was exciting when we were doing those movie turtles, you know, because there was never like a Foot Clan, like a movie Shredder, just a lot of that stuff. It took 30 years for it to get made, because like, you know, there's a ghost painting that just appeared out of nowhere. Hold on.
It was a fun slide. You couldn't see it from my perspective, but that was like, it was very satisfying watching that kind of drift.
This is an old painting I did back in like a million years ago.
Whoa.
Weird ghost guy. It's actually Alexander Graham Bell. I started a Granitor out of, I made with No Zone from Toxic Crusaders. I used him as a base with that, that big pointy nose, and I chopped him up and mixed him with a few other, I think like, you know, the Doughboy, like they made those World War II Bebop and Rocksteady. I took some of those parts and mixed them with No Zone, and like
that's a good call. That's a good call as No Zone. He fills that well, I think.
And there's the other guy too. He's like the skeleton biker guy. He kind of has the same haircut and everything as Scrag. So like I was like, oh, I could turn this guy into like a Scrag character.
That is like a glow in the dark guy, right?
Yeah,
I think if I remember it probably glue in the dark. That's the litmus for many of the figures. Do you have like a favorite character from the movies that got you super excited for when that license came to be?
I was always thinking in the back of my head, like, who could I use for like a Chief Stearns? Like, who could I customize into like a Chief Stearns figure? I love Chief Stearns, but like, I don't know, the first movie, like I love Tatsu. He was probably my favorite figure, or not figure, I mean my favorite character in the movies, because he was so tough and scary. Like you see him like again, the movie's violent. Like, he beats up another foot soldier. You see him training that first guy. The kid bows and he kicks him in the head, and like, he was so mean and tough and scary, and he had just such a presence about him. Like, Tatsu is an awesome character. I used my Ninjor figure from He-Man as a kid because there was never a Tatsu figure. But Raphael in the first movie is so cool because he's just so angry, and like, everything that happens in that movie is just because like he couldn't chill out, you know.
Is there any characters in there that might require more hoops to jump through in terms of potentially having those, like Vanilla Ice or
any human? It's like, kind of, they all have hoops because we have to secure individual likeness rights. Like, none of the humans were included in that deal, so like anything that's like a person and not just like a puppet or something, they're all like, you have to reach out to the talent for each one. So like, it's been cool so far because, you know, foot soldiers are easy because they're wearing masks, so that's like the one exception. And like Shredder, because his face is obscured by the mask, we could make Shredder. But yeah, anyone else.
Are there other versions that you did of the Turtles before you were on the Turtles that you really like how they turned out?
Over the years, I've made a few different like turtle sculpts. Like, in college, I made some real weird ones where they were real gangly looking. Like, they were just real cartoony. And yeah, the first one I kind of did, I made this like movie Raphael statue a bunch of years ago. I think I'd been working at NECA for maybe about 4 years. And then I don't know. I had this like weird itch to like do something with like I felt like I'd learned enough at NECA to do like a movie accurate thing. So I was like watching the movie frame by frame like we would do with like Predator or Alien or Rambo or any other NECA project. I kind of just treated it like a work project. I just kind of chip away at it at night. So I made this like Raph statue and then had the guy at work like mold and cast it, and I painted it up, and I had like the NECA, our photographer Steve, photograph it, like light it, and it looked cool. I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. And then I don't know, a year or two later, like Randy had seen it because I brought it into work, and you know, it was sitting on my desk for a little while. So when we were doing, I think we were already, movie statue was done. I think we were already working on the arcade and the cartoon, even the cartoon, those figures too. I had just sculpted that arcade figure. It was technically started as a cartoon figure, but I had sculpted that just for myself because, again, like, I made this movie Raph statue, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try just making like a cartoon accurate like figure. And in that too, I showed it to Randy, and then he's, oh, we should show it to Nick and like get the license or make it. He was like, Randy liked the cartoon thing that I had sculpted, and he's like, that's your project now. I think I was working on some Gremlin stuff at the time, and he was like, put the Gremlin stuff aside. He's like, just finish this turtle and like we'll turn it into something. So I'd finished it. We turned that into the arcade figure. The movie statue was sitting there on my desk. It was finished. And then Randy emailed me one day. He was just like, good news, we locked down like the movie turtle license. And I was like, oh my God. And so these two like kind of personal projects turned into like actual work stuff. And that was kind of like the origin of, it is kind of where it all started. Like after, you know, the Eastman and Laird stuff had like sort of come and gone. I made the cartoon turtle. I made that movie statue, Raphael, just for fun. And then they turned into work projects. That was like a surreal thing.
Oh man, that's
I remember
cool.
Randy emailed me. I remember getting this email, and he was like, we're doing the movie Turtles. And I was like, holy crap, like, no way. There's like certain items that would be great to talk about because they're not necessarily going to go into a 2-pack. Every now and then the retailers are like, hey, like, do you have anything special that we could like bundle some stuff? So it's always like some figures you work on, it's just like Baxter, human Baxter, you know, like Barney is a good one. Or like when he gets, like when Krang zaps him and he turns into the Fly, he's like, you see his skeleton, and like he'd be a good glow in the dark or like a skeletal kind of repaint or something. You know, there's like there's a handful of figures where like stuff happens to him on the show and you're like, this would be a great exclusive for something, you know. So you're always like thinking ahead. If you sculpt one figure, how many repaints and different versions can you like, you know, sort of maximize the tooling and stuff. So
absolutely, yeah, you used to do a great job with that.
With the turtle stuff, it's always just like what is something in the show that happens so you don't have to just do a weird repaint for no kind of reason, you know. Like there's like, why do you know, there's like a hologram Mikey in that one episode, or like a hologram Shredder in the game. So those are cool, like glow in the dark or, you know, iridescent colors you could do. When in the cartoon, Muckman glows when he gets around the turtles, you know, so like that was a good reason to make a glow in the dark Muckman figure. So
well, I mean, I'm thinking too, with a lot of these, and I love the selection that you had with this 4-pack because it kind of embodies a lot of those different buck types. So I'm like thinking, oh, one of these kind of looks like it could have the same, you know, body type as like a Garson Grunge. if you decided to do another one, you know, down the road.
Yeah, that would be cool.
The original show had so many like unfinished business plot holes, if that makes sense. I mean, you've watched it, I'm sure, multiple times at this point, and I'm like probably way more than is healthy to watch. So, but I mean, like, there's so many pieces that just, it's like, I was positive as a kid that Mona Lisa was coming back as like, you know, here's this cool new character we've created as a love interest to Raph, and you know, obviously she'll be here. Nope. You know, Lotus, same deal. She was there a couple times, but I felt like I had images in my mind of her like joining the group and then it becoming a thing, but just didn't
well, they were locked into that sort of like syndicated format where it was like every episode had to be this standalone thing. There's occasionally you get a 2-part episode, or like Lotus, which she would come back or something. But going back and watching it as an adult, you know, and doing it for work, I'm shocked at like how each season, like the Technodrome they would change locations. It was like it was in the ocean and it was frozen in the Arctic, and then it, you know, like I was shocked that like there was actually that much of like a story arc carrying over like from one episode to another, like for a whole season. Now it's in Dimension X and then they're on an asteroid, you know what I mean? Like it was shocking for that, because you watch an episode of He-Man and like nothing changes. Like the episode is just self-contained and everything's resets at the end.
That is funny to think about that but it's also funny to think that they, you know, it's like that could have been a money-saving thing there too, had they not done that, right? Where it's like they just reuse the same stock image of them being under that tunnel, you know. To me, like all of Bebop and Rocksteady's old gang, I didn't realize I was not the only one that was so into, you know, because it was remarkable that like they make these mutants and never use them again. You know,
I know.
Where did they go?
Where did they go? And then you see them in that jail cell, and they never came back. And like, what happened to them? And they're totally like, they were so interesting. Like they're on screen for like 2 seconds, and it's like in the Technodrome, such a big place. It's like, where are they? Like, what happened? And like it was like Shredder had all these plans to make all these mutants, and then he just gave up, and he's just like, oh, I got Bebop and Rocksteady, and I don't want any more morons running around wrecking everything. Like it's so weird. So they're really like, I've talked to Nick from the Foosh about how the, you know, Bebop and Rocksteady gang, some of these characters, they're like the Cantina aliens, you know, where you just you see them for a second and they're there, and then they were just there for that one scene, but they stick in your brain, you know. And it's like, as a kid, you just want to know like, who are these characters, you know, and they're mutants, and they're just so weird. Like Grunt is like this cool lizard thing with a mohawk.
Well, and you fill in your own, you know, your imagination fills in the gaps there. So it's like, that's, I mean, look at Mandalorian now, right? More specifically, Boba Fett, right? Because Mandalorian's its own thing. But Boba, it's like, this was a character who did not have an enormous role in this film, but has over the years, I think, like metastasized in terms of people's minds. And that's like, I feel like that is, you know, their mutant gang.
That's for sure. Scrag is very similar to Boba Fett, just in terms of like, that coolness.
Do you have a turtle that you most relate to? I guess this is a bigger question because it changes over the iterations, but
that to me was the thing. Like, I might be the only one that, I don't know if I have like always a go-to favorite turtle. Like I said earlier, like Raph in the first movie was so awesome. They're really all great in the first movie. Leo was cool, and like Donatello was hilarious in the first movie. Like in the 2012 show, like Donatello, I really liked him a lot. Like I didn't know, I was like, Rob Paulson's gonna do Donatello, like how's he gonna pull this off? And then he did. It was amazing. I was just like, oh wow. And like when Jason Biggs was doing Leonardo, Leonardo in the first like 2 seasons. Like I thought Jason Biggs was a great Leonardo in the 2012 show. In the 4Kids show, like the whatever it was, like 2003 or whatever, like Michelangelo is really interesting in that show. So they're still at the core, they're always the same. I don't know, every iteration, like there's always a different kind of standout character. I guess for me, I kind of like all of them. If I had to pick, I would just, my favorite color is blue. I always like Leo, I always like Raph. As I've gotten older, like Donatello is always, it's like Corey Feldman doing that voice in the movies he was great as Donatello, and it's weird to me that he was Donatello and they didn't just like make him Michelangelo, but it works so like Robbie Rist is perfect as Mikey in those movies, and Feldman was fantastic as Donnie, so it all like those choices all worked really well. I don't know, I think I probably like Leo or Raph most of the time, but
mine have changed over the years too. I remember like when I was younger, I was always Mikey when I was when I was younger, and I think it was just because I liked his like energetic spirit, and then and Donnie, Mikey and Donnie, right? And then as I got older, I'm like, I really relate to Raph.
Yeah, I don't know what issue it was. There's something in the IDW comics where like Splinter's talking to Raph and he's like, I used to be just like you when I was a kid. Like I was like this hot-headed, I learned to control it. And I thought that was so interesting, that because you think of Splinter as like this calm, like Zen kind of like always focused and in control. And then there's like this little backstory thing where it's like he had some anger issues too. It's like, oh wow, that's an interesting layer to Hamato Yoshi.
Yeah. Well, it makes it, I was going to say it makes him more human, but it makes him more mutant in that moment, where you see him as more than just this one thing. And that's fun. I imagine in some cases it's like some things might be a harder sell, but do you find that like when you do some of those teases, you discover that there's this enormous fan base for these things where it makes it potentially easier for that to come out?
That's pretty much why we're in the position we're in now, is because there were all these collectors like waiting for this stuff for years, and like no one was making it, and then we stepped up and started making this stuff, and like people showed up. The movie Turtles, it was like that. The cartoon Turtles, like Bebop and Rocksteady, were like, I think, way more popular than, the Turtle. Everyone wanted to get that Bebop and Rocksteady set, and everyone wanted to get like April and Casey, and like we kept making like these side characters, and like, we did Metalhead or did the android Krang, and it was like, all these side characters were sort of becoming more popular than the Turtles were. So it got a little easier to make like Wingnut and Screw Loose, and Zack and Smash and the Crooked Ninja Turtle gang. We made that big Chrome Dome. Like Chrome Dome was awesome. A couple of years ago, I wouldn't have thought that was possible to make a big like 10-inch Chrome Dome figure. We keep pushing like the envelope, see how far we can go with it. I remember when we had Metalhead, that was one of the first ones we did digitally. And so we were trying to figure out what this, and again, on the show, like it's really inconsistent from like one scene to the next, like sizes change drastically. So sometimes he looked like he was as big as Android Krang, and sometimes he was more like Shredder's height or something. But we printed out Metalhead, and Randy was like, "Oh, this is bigger than I thought he was going to be." Like I didn't really want to make anyone bigger than a Triceraton. At one point, I wanted them to kind of be like the big, bulky, like kind of bruiser, but Leatherhead's like huge. Randy was like, "Oh yeah, we should do Chrome Dome," and I was like, "Chrome Dome's really big." Like there's one episode where he's more like an 18-inch figure, but then he's in Night of the Rogues, he's a little more manageable. But I was like, Chrome Dome's really big, and Randy's we just got to do it, because by that point, the line was really doing well, so we could take more risks and stuff. Like Rex One, that he's kind of a big bulky character. There's a bunch of those guys. Krangazoids, those guys are big, and
would be great for army building, I'd imagine.
But for sure, do the evil Rex One or something.
Same with the Krangazoids.
Krangazoids, those guys too. And they have all the different colored bubble walkers, and they have the matching colors to the bubble walkers. So there's army building is always good.
Did you have an all-time favorite hero from that show, or a favorite villain?
It changes a little bit. I always liked the Rat King, and I always liked Trag. When we were first doing the figures, like I really wanted to make Trag and Granitor before we did Bebop and Rocksteady. I think Randy let me sculpt those first, I think. But yeah, there was always a presence. Like when Trag would come on the show, it was not super frequent, but like whenever Trag showed up, the Turtles were like, oh crap, like we're in trouble. You know, he had just like a cool presence about him. The Rat King was always fun because he was so weird. And then late, like I didn't remember this guy from childhood, but when I was watching the show for work, Dirk Savage, like that episode is so cool. There's so many characters in that episode, but like he's great. I think like Jim Cummings does the voice, and he's got that like iconic 90s cartoon villain voice. Yeah, Dirk Savage is like super cool character, like this mutant bounty hunter guy. Yeah, those guys, like I always loved Usagi Yojimbo, and I always loved the Punk Frogs as far as the heroes go. I just loved when the toys would make an appearance in the show. Anytime like those guys, you know, like, oh, here's your toy, like pops up on the show. I love that on He-Man too, like when Tongue Lasher or like Cobra Khan or some of those guys would, or Whiplash, they weren't in every episode, but when they show, you know, Too Bad, they'd show up, and it was cool to see them.
Yeah, well, because you had that connectivity to it from a playability level too.
Yeah,
you know.
I guess that's it. It's just like the thing sitting on the carpet next to me. It's like, oh my god, there he's on the show. So.
Well, and what's funny with Dirk Savage is that like I always assumed his character arc would have turned into Monty Moose because like if you look at the design of that,
they're very similar outfits and stuff. Yeah, that's funny too. You sort of like, I guess you make your own headcanon for this stuff, right? Like you just, it is interesting. Yeah, maybe he did turn into Monty Moose at some point.
Let's say he did, and let's say
what if Monty Moose was Dirk Savage?
There's nothing explicitly saying he's not. So, you know, other than we got to figure out who becomes his little sidekick. This has been such a blast nerding out with you for a bit and hearing more about what's coming from the Turtles. I obviously would love to have you back on at some point too. Anything you want folks to know in terms of where they can find you, how they can reach NECA on socials?
You know, NECA they're on all the normal, like Twitter, Instagram, what's the other one? Facebook. I don't know if they're on TikTok or something too. I don't know how any of that stuff works. I try to stay off of there. Are
we going to see some Trevor dances on TikTok soon?
Not likely.
This is so much fun. This is a blast, and I appreciate you coming on the show. So until next week, Turtle Speaky.
Keep it geeky.
Well, that's it for part 3 of our interview series, but stay tuned because part 4 should be coming very soon. We realize you could have been anywhere and you chose to nerd out with us, and we appreciate that. And while you're here, make sure to check out some of our other really cool videos we think that you'll appreciate quite a bit. And if you haven't already, make sure to sub, like, and share with any other folks you think will appreciate the kind of videos we're putting out. So, until next week, Turtle Speaky.
Keep it geeky.